G'day everyone, welcome back to another video on the channel. Happy New Year's everybody, and as per usual we always like to do this every single New Year's. Go over every AFL team's New Year's resolution for the upcoming season. Now of course every AFL team's goal is to win the premiership, but with each AFL team I like to give them a specific goal based off their expectations and their scenarios heading into this year. Feel free to leave a like and subscribe if you do go on to enjoy today's video. And let's get into it. Okay, so let's begin with the Adelaide Crows. It's a pretty straightforward one for me, and this side's just got to play finals football in 2025. They were oh so close 2 years ago, and this year they'll just expose quite a bit. Their off-the-field administrations and their play development, and questions were asked, is this team good enough? But that was such an exciting side 2 years ago with how they moved the footy and the points they put up, high scoring side from that season. So the potential's there, and they've got a handful of promising young players like 𝐼𝐴𝐿𝐼𝐿, Billy Dowling, Zach Taylor, Phil Thorpe. He came back in the back half of the year, kicked like 18 goals in 7 games. Thought Fogarty was great as the season wore on too. Josh Worrell and Dan Kern back there as well. They're a side that just has very high expectations. This is a team that hasn't played finals footy since I think 2017. It's been quite some time, and their fans have had enough. It's just got to be finals or bust in 2025 for the Crows. Matty Nicks certainly going to be under a lot of pressure as well, but the promise is there for the Crows. Can they find consistency in 2025? Now for the Brisbane Lions, and my New Year's resolution for them is to keep the list healthy and go back-to-back. Why can't they go back-to-back in 2025? They were able to win the premiership without 𝐓𝐡𝐞 𝐎𝐿𝐼𝐿, without Tom Doedee, without Lincoln McCarthy, and also Gardner, I'm pretty sure, was one. A lot of ACLs, so one of them is to keep the list healthy. They don't want to have these recurring long-term injuries heading into this season. So much resilience was shown last year, winning that premiership with just down and out against the odds. So now it feels like that monkey's off the back a little bit. They've had so many cracks, they've finally got one. So I feel like the pressure's relieved a little bit, and now they can have the tools, and they do have the potential to really push on and become a powerhouse in the competition. So yeah, really solid chances I feel like they are to go back-to-back, and also just got to keep that list healthy. For the Carlton Football Club now, I say this one basically every year, it's to strive for consistency and make the top 4. Finals football is definitely on the agenda for Carlton once again heading into 2025, but the issue for me is no matter how good they look, a few weeks later or just along the line of the season, they'll have games where you think, how is this side going to be playing finals football, playing like that? Michael Voss has been under pressure throughout stages of a season, where it's last year or the year before. To be fair, they were really hurt by injury in 2024, Charlie Kerner and a lot of key players going down. But this is a side that just needs consistency in their game. They have games where they look like an absolute powerhouse in the midfield. Their turnover game really improved in 2024, but then they have games where they just leak goals and are far too easy to beat in the back 50. They've got to really try and make their contested brand the best in 2025. Looking at that midfield, they definitely have the potential to do that. So for the Blues, it's to strive for consistency and push on for the top 4. Now I move on to the Pies, and for their New Year's resolution, it is to keep the list healthy and contend again. So many mixed opinions heading into this year for the Pies. It's just a lot of unknown, because when you look at their best and their premiership players and the experience they've got, it can definitely guide them to another top 8 berth. But at the same time, if they just get absolutely stitched up with injuries once again, and their youth, apart from Nick Dacos, is definitely questionable too, it looks like they could slip down the ladder. So first off, I think if they want any success heading into this year, they've just got to keep the list healthy. Jordan 𝐼𝐿𝐼𝐿 went down, 𝘧𝐼𝐿𝐼𝐿 went down as well, a handful of key position players as well. I said before, they are the oldest list heading into 2025, so durability is going to be one of their main goals to try and get right. And contend again, because at their best, they are still a very good ball-moving side. Craig McRae as well, he's a very good scenario-based coach. They're great in those close games, the Pies, as we all know. So if they are able to keep the players fit, I think they can really contend once again heading into this year. For the Essendon Football Club now, and my New Year's resolution for them is to get the forward line firing. This is one of the bigger issues when looking at Essendon, especially in the back half of 2024. Their cohesion and chemistry just went out the window when trying to convert inside 50. I still remember that game against the Swans, repeated inside 50s, and they were just making an absolute muck of it. I feel like when looking at their midfield, it's in check. It has the potential to really get firing this year. Merritt's in his prime, and Caldwell and Durham are the ones that really strike out as players that could go to the next level this year. And with Jake Stringer departing the club, 𝐼𝐶𝐞 𝐎𝐥𝐝 coming in, could they have like a Nick Watson type? You know, a first-year revelation. I feel like they could really benefit off that. Look at someone like Nick Hine, his first season, the Dons. He was outstanding and they made the finals. Just got to really get that forward line right. This is just still an issue when looking at Essendon and a handful of their losses. Jake Gresham and also Langford, can they have more output? They have patches, the Dons, where they're contested and their clearance game is very good. So if they can really get that forward line firing this year, it's certainly going to do them a lot of favours. For the Fremantle Dockers now, and my New Year's resolution is for them to make the push for top 4. And to be honest, they could have honestly made the top 4 in 2024, but they just dropped a handful of games. Josh Tracy went down. They lost a lot of close games, but at their best, the Dockers, they looked very dangerous last season. And with the young core they've got, can they push on to make the big top 4? There are still questions in their game. They have matches where their ball movement isn't as slick, so they've really got to knuckle down and make that more consistent. But defensively, they set up really well, the Dockers. And their midfield is dangerous. And with Hayden Young now pushing more onto the half-forward line, impacting with his lovely kicks inside 50, that could really leg up the Dockers. And Josh Tracy was out, as I said before, the last few weeks. So if he can have a fully fit year, or he could really honestly kick over 50 goals. Don't forget 𝐼𝐻𝐼𝐿 too. There's just so many promising young players, and Shea Bolton arriving in the club, he could potentially be one of the recruits of the year. That's a big void he's going to be filling in, just that crafty midfielder that's able to push forward and really create chances at that high half-forward area. So they have the talent, the Dockers. Can they put it together and make the top 4? Can they push on? The Cats now, and my New Year's resolution for them is to keep on evolving the youngsters, which I did really well this year, or last year, sorry, and contend again, because this was a side that was pretty much a kick away from the grand finals. So that tells you alone that this side definitely has the tools to contend again and push on for another potential premiership. But evolve the youngsters is a big one here, because they still have those older types that are now nearing retirement. Jeremy Cameron's getting another year older. Dangerfield, I still feel like they've got a heavy reliance on. He was awesome in the back half of 2024. So it's the players like Max Holmes, who was great this last year, and Tanner Brew, and Lawson Humphries was a revelation for the Cats as well in the back half. The Cats player development is some of the best in the business, so if they are able to really keep on evolving those youngsters, make the smooth transition of the younger players coming in, playing good footy, whilst the older players do eventually fade out, I think that's going to be really handy for the Cats. And Bailey Smith, and as well, really strong recruit. And does Sam DeConing get more time? He was, in and out of the side in 2024. So, for the Cats, it's to keep on evolving the youngsters, which I did really well last year, and contend again. For the Gold Coast Suns now, we basically give them this New Year's resolution every single year. It's to develop consistency and make the finals. This side just has to strive to play finals football in 2025. And we say it every year, like, this side is definitely a chance to make finals, but I feel like this is their probably most optimistic year to do so, because Damien Hardwick's second year at the club, he knows what he needs out of that list after his first year. And in the back half of the year, they just could not find consistency. They were terrible away from home, but the positive signs are there. They were dangerous at home in 2024. Some of their turnover game was really damaging, and that midfield group, just on paper, is a really good quality one. They've got good names back there. Bodie Erland finished second in the best in Ferris. Collins and Ballard, very underrated key position players. Just need to find consistency heading into 2025 for the Suns and try and push on for their very first finals appearance. GWS now, and my New Year's resolution for them is to become the best ball moving side in the competition. When watching them last year, they just had games where the ball movement just wasn't as slick, and they had games where their midfield was well exposed. They've really got to knuckle down, strive for success obviously this year, given the last 2 years ending in heartbreak, and try and make the Orange Tsunami the best in the business, because they had games last year, just didn't look as good. Try and get back to their best. That would be a huge sign if the Giants want to succeed. They're a very well balanced team, the Giants. Their depth will be questioned a bit this year with a handful of players departing the club, but this side's just always around there, and they have the confidence, you'd think, to contend once again. So really try and get that Orange Tsunami very schmick heading in 2025. For the Hawks now, and my resolutions for them is to build off last year's tremendous campaign and don't get complacent. Now, of course, in the inner sanctum, Sam Mitchell won't be saying to his players, it's just going to be a cakewalk, lads. Obviously, he's going to be saying, well, they're going to strategise against us really well. They're going to try and pick apart our game. We need to get better. But it still has to be said, because when players and teams have breakout years, questions are arose on them on are they able to get better, or are they able to keep that high level? A lot of mixed opinions on the Hawks heading into next year. People are saying, are they going to get found out and miss the 8? Or no, they're going to keep on getting better and make the top 4. I'm leaning more towards that side. I just thought their brand was such an exciting one. They moved the ball so well. They were tough as nails in the contested game. Pretty much all of their game was in very good check. They're still relatively a young side too, so there are questions on, given they're a younger team, they might have a bit of a dip this year, and then next year they're far on and potentially win the premiership. But they just got to build off last year. They have the confidence. They're a team with very high morale. So can they build off last year and just don't get complacent? I feel like that's a big one for the Hawks heading into 2025. For the Melbourne Football Club now, it's a pretty easy one for me when talking about New Year's resolutions for the Demons. It is to get the core plays fit and firing for 2025. When looking at Melbourne, they've got that really strong core amount of players like Oliver, Petrarca, Gawn, 𝐼𝐼𝐻𝐿𝐼, May and Lever, but past that, their depth is questioned. And this is what we've been saying about the Demons the past few seasons, and it really was exposed last year when players like Oliver and Petrarca went down with injury, Oliver with form dips, and May just isn't looking as strong as the past few seasons before. The depth was really hit and exposed, and they ended up finishing, in the bottom 6. So I think it's an absolute necessity for at least Oliver and Petrarca to get back fit and firing to their best abilities for them to push on and potentially return into the top 8. They do have some promising young players coming through as well, but it's just a critical importance that these players are fit and firing, the core players for the Demons in 2025. Now for North Melbourne, I've got a bit of a ladder-based New Year's resolution here. It is just to be out of the bottom 4. This team needs success, it needs promise, it just needs wins on the board. And it's looking like one of the more exciting seasons heading into 2025, with finally addressing the issue of the past decade of just not good enough senior quality players. Luke Parker, Caleb Daniel, Jack Darling have all come in and could certainly make an impact. I'm really liking the look of Parker, playing mainly a forward, but just being that mentor to the young midfield they do have. They just got such a promising young group, and when looking in the offseason they had, trading away their future first rounder for Whitlock in the end, that shows that, hey, we don't need the draft capital anymore. We need to contend. We know we have the list that's very capable of pushing at least out of the bottom 4. Early last year, some of their ball movement looked really exciting, so can they really hone in on that, make it more consistent and make it a pure strength against opposition? At their best, the midfield is very good in terms of winning the clearances. It's just, are they able to hold up defensively? Because that's just one of their biggest issues when watching North play year in, year out. So it's got to be out of the bottom 4. They need to see the wins, the Kangas, for 2025. For Port Adelaide now, this one is the exact same as Essendon's New Year's resolution, and it is for the pair to get the forward line firing in 2025. They've recruited Jack 𝐓𝐿𝐼𝐻𝐿𝐼, they drafted Joe Berry. Sam Palpepper is coming back from injury as well. Willie Rowley always has some nice cameos. Port Adelaide, every year when they are expected to perform, they'll just have games where they just hoof it in inside 50, left, right and centre. They have key forwards that just aren't strong enough aerially. I thought a bit of 𝐼𝐻𝐼𝐻𝐪 and also Marshall. He was in and out, of course, with concussion, but they just had a lot of those moments where they just weren't able to really capitalise. Forward to centre, I still remember that game against, it was the first showdown. They kicked like 4 goals, 12. They are a very high inside 50 side, Port Adelaide. They love to use the corridor. They're aggressive. They're able to get a lot of scores and opportunities off the turnover and off the intercept. So they've really got to knuckle down and make the forward line a high-octane one in 2025. They've got the midfield. I feel like defensively, there are still issues, but the big one for me is, can they really get that forward line into an efficient one? Because they're just year in, year out with Port Adelaide, just the same old bombing it inside 50. They've got to make it an absolute strength against opposition in 2025, Port Adelaide. For the Richmond Football Club now, and it's a pretty understandable one here. Obviously not really going to be striving for premiership glory at all, given their young list. So it is just to get the most out of the youngsters in 2025. Try not to have injuries like they had the previous year. They need the players like Taranto and Hopper to keep injury-free. Lynch potentially as well to really nurture these younger players coming through. Josh Smiley and Sam Lawler could potentially have stints early on in the midfield or play half forward. Harry Armstrong, the young key forward, could he push on and make his debut and beat out the likes of 𝐿𝐿𝐼𝐻𝐿𝐼? Not necessarily just the draftees too. There's players I really like. For example, Tom Brown, he's a lovely kick out of the D50. Can he continue to get to the next level in 2025? And not necessarily on the field, but off the field is going to be really important, I think, for the Tigers this year. Really try and get that team bonding and team culture at its absolute highest as possible as the years go on, because a lot of these players are going to be playing with each other for quite some time, given all these young players' potential. So for the Tigers, it's to get the very most out of these young players in 2025. For the Saints now, it is to push on back into finals football and become a higher scoring side. I think the Saints defensively in check, very good. Their midfield has its questions, but with Jack Macrae recruited to the club, that's going to definitely address a need in that inside midfield game. But it's the forward line that always leaves me questions. They have performances where they're able to really move the footy nice. And look, the Saints were one of the top sides in the AFL last year with getting points off defensive 50. They move the ball really well, but they'll have matches where they lose close ones on just being so poor with their inside 50s entries, inside 50 entries. When they made finals in 2023, they were the lowest points for side, I think, out of the top 12. So it's a critical importance for them to become a high scoring side, because if they are to make the finals based off their good, strong systems of team defence, well, they're just going to be macking up the numbers again. It's all about the points. It's all about offense, I feel, with the modern day very good quality football side. They'll get back in Max King from injury, so he'll certainly have a big say for this season. They move the footy really well, the Saints, so the potential's there for them to become a high scoring side in 2025. For the Sydney Swans now, it is to evolve the list and game plan under the new coach of 𝐷𝐞𝐞 𝐎𝐥𝐝. It was a bit of a shock, really, with Horse announcing on the I think it was the second day of pre-season, that he is stepping down and giving the keys to 𝐷𝐞𝐞 𝐎𝐥𝐝, a man that's been under Horse for about 7 years, so it almost seems like a very good quality transition. The Swans have done it once again. It was Paul Roos to Longmire, now Longmire to 𝐷𝐞𝐞 𝐎𝐥𝐝. And I just feel it's such an importance with this Swan side. It's so talented, but yet again, what let them down in the last Saturday of September was just their contested game, and probably questions on their team heading into the grand final, with not really much attention with inside midfield players, rather going for sort of those outside flanker types, not including Taylor Adams, and obviously Mills is injured, of course, as well. But Callum Mills is a very good example. He needs to get back into the inside midfield group. He is a very good contested mid, and that's got to be the main focus for the Swans. And that's what 𝐷𝐞𝐞 𝐎𝐥𝐝 said on his first press conference. They're wanting to have more of a focus with the contested game, really get that right. Obviously, strong team defense as well. And I say evolve the game plan because the game's in very good order, though. They were the top side in the competition off the turnover game. They're a very good ball-moving side, but can they have more of a focus on the contested stuff? Sort of like what Geelong did in 2022. Really adopt more of a focus on winning the ground ball. That eventually led them to a premiership. So for the Swans, evolve the game plan and the list as well. They've got some nice youngsters coming through like 𝐼𝐻𝐿𝐴𝐻𝐿𝐴𝐻𝐿𝐴𝐻𝐿𝐴𝐻𝐿 as well, first round pick from a few years ago. So for the Swans, it's just a critical importance to keep on building this list, evolving the game plan and turning it into potentially a premiership winning side. For the West Coast Eagles now, and my New Year's resolution for them is to close the gap between their best and worst. I think this is just such a big issue for the Eagles when watching them play, especially last year. They did improve quite a bit though in 2024. They had more wins, they were out of the bottom two, and they had some awesome wins against the likes of the Demons at home. But then you had performances like against the Dogs at Marvel and also the Pies at Marvel, and that absolute stinker in the last round against the Cats, almost getting belted by 100 points at half time. Just a big focus for me with the Eagles. Got to close in that gap between their best and worst, because they have the promise with a few of these younger players. 𝐼𝐻𝐿𝐴𝐻𝐿𝐴 was injured quite a bit, so he's going to be returning into the midfield heading into 2025. Harley Reid in there as well. Jack Williams forward of the ball. I know Edwards, I think, is like 25 this year, but he still is technically a youngster given he's played under 50 games. He's going to be filling in the void, no doubt, of Barras leaving the club. Jimmy's now playing more of a general defender role, Brady Hough as well. So I think nurturing the youngsters is a big one too, and I feel like they've addressed that well with bringing across the likes of Liam Baker and Jack Graham, a bit of experience to help them. So some of their best footy in 2024 was very good, and it pushed good quality sides, but at the same time, they had some awful footy last year as well. So they've just got to eliminate that from their game heading into 2025 if they're any chance of pushing up higher on the ladder. And the Western Bulldogs now, the final team to discuss in this video today. My New Year's resolution is basically the same every year. Become more consistent. It's just self-explanatory with this Bulldogs side. There's promise, there's talent across all lines of the field, but they just never show consistency. It's going to be Luke Beveridge, I think, last year before his contract runs out. So quite a bit of pressure on him. He did make some nice moves though in the back half of last year, like putting Rory Lobb in defence. He was one of the stats-wise best intercept markers in the competition. There's someone like Jess Busslinger join him in defence as well, a highly rated key position player that's been brewing really nicely in the VFL. And their midfield, of course, just so stacked and talented. Their ground level game and stoppage game is some of the best in the competition as well. Still think a big issue for them though, not only their inconsistency, but just sort of bottom 6 range of their best 22 each week. I feel like lets them down a little bit. They had some nice revelations this year in the forward line, like Riley West had some good cameos, and Garcia earned himself a 3-year contract with a breakout year too. 𝐼𝐷𝐿𝐼𝐻𝐿𝐼 𝐻𝐿𝐼 another one that I feel like needs to go to the next level. He's been good, but not outstanding. He has games where he's just brilliant, and then he has games where he's just quiet. So he's really got to try and be more consistent, and so does this whole dog side in 2025. If there are any chance to just show success, because it's the same old story we see every year with the Bulldogs. Can they finally push on for the top 4? So over on there is every AFL team's New Year's resolutions for 2025. A video I always like doing every single year. So let me know your thoughts and queries about each team down below. Would you have different resolutions? Let me know down below in the comments. Always love to hear your people's opinions. Make sure to leave a like and subscribe if you did go on to enjoy today's video, lads. And until next time, I'll talk to you later. See you later, fellas.